Everyone, my name is Leah Smalley. I'm the Assistant Director of Financial Aid Services at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. Thank you so much for joining me today. October is our last webcast of the year. We have the holidays coming up, and so this is our last official one that we have going on. So hopefully we'll have lots of people joining and lots of good conversation in the chat box. As we go through this presentation, if you have questions, please go ahead and type those in there. And then Deshae Reed, who is the director, the senior director of Financial Aid Services, will be answering those for you. And then if there's any at the end, I can answer or we can circle back on anything. Okay, so today we're going to be focusing on a few things. So I'm going to toggle on over to my agenda here. So this is more about, did you know that these things happened? We've been sending out different things here and there, and also we have a lot on FADs coming up. So the first thing I'm going to talk about today in a lot of detail is Financial Aid Database Cycle 3. From there, I'm going to give you a brief glimpse of our Financial Aid Database Modernization. You may or may not have heard of it. From there, we'll be touching on some statutory requirement updates. I'm sure y'all are aware there's lots of federal changes going on, so you may be curious, how does that affect the state program? So we'll touch on that. Lastly, we always go through reminders and updates, things that are in the pipeline or that you need to be aware of. And then lastly, if you have any questions at the end, then we can touch on those. So let's get started with Financial Aid Database Cycle 3 and why that's so significant. So we have 3 cycles throughout the year. So this is our big one. This is the one that I'll say matters the most. This is when you certify your data to the coordinating board. The coordinating board collects data to do a lot of different things. We use it for reporting. We use it for your allocations. People request that money from us to do statistical analysis. Our legislators use it to make decisions on funding and budgeting. So it's very, very important that the data that's sent from the institutions is as accurate as possible. So that's where this happens, is in cycle 3. Cycle 1 and 2 are also very critical, but this is the one that kind of balances the books, makes sure everything is good. And so that way, when we end the year, everything is ready to go for the following year's calculations and reporting requests. So the reason that this one is so big, so let's talk about some reminders, is that on October 6th, cycle 3 opened up. That means schools can start submitting your files. Again, this one takes the longest amount of time from what we've seen. So we do encourage you to start submitting those files now, so that you can see what kind of stuff comes through as far as errors are concerned. The deadline to certify is December 17th, 2021. I don't know about y'all, but it was just January yesterday. So I think this feels far out, but it will be here in a blink. So definitely don't wait. We know that y'all have plenty of other reports. Y'all got audits, you've got conferences. There's a lot that happens in the last few months of the year. So this is one of those ones where if you can start working on your file now, it'll be easier to reconcile and get through the process so that you can make that deadline. Again, the deadline is so important because we use that data, again, for allocations. When the files get delayed, certifications get delayed, then that also delays things next year. So keep that in mind. This one is very unique in that cycles 1 and 2 don't require reconciliation. We still provide you information, but you're not required to balance those items, but this cycle you are. And this year is unique because this year we're including gear in your reconciliation. Since those funds have never been available before, you've never seen this before. So that's one additional layer that almost all schools are going to have to do for their reconciliation. Lastly, the biggest piece of the loans, that's usually the most time-consuming piece of this, we upload a listing of student loan details in our Move It DMZ system. So that's something that you'll want to make sure you download and work through now. Again, those typically take the longest amount of time. One thing I wanted to point out is that last year in November of 2020, I did a step-by-step and kind of a walkthrough of reconciliation as well. It was even more thorough than this presentation is going to be. I'm trying to change this one a little bit this year, so I'm providing a different level of information. But if you are new or you need a refresher, I definitely recommend going back to last year's. If you go under Stay Connected in our webcast archives, you'll find in November that there was a dedicated FADS Reconciliation webcast. And so that one is very helpful. You'll probably hear me mention it multiple times today. So let's get started on FAD Cycle 3. So the first thing I wanted to do is give you an overview of the process, either because you're new or just if you're curious about, what are the steps, high level, here's how it works. The first step is you upload a file from your school to our system, and we run it in our program to make sure that it doesn't have any errors in it. Well, that's in a perfect world. So once it runs, it's going to generate some errors that you have to resolve. Those are student level errors. So various examples I could give you, but it's all located within our manual. You can see what all those edits are that we're running your file against. Once you clear all your student level errors, then you're going to reconcile your programs. That is saying that what you've asked from the coordinating board matches the file that you submitted. Those two things have to match, not only the students within it, but the amounts that you're reporting within it. So that's our reconciliation process. From there, you have to submit any overrides. We know that there's not always, everything's perfect within your error resolution. So there's times where there's certain circumstances where you're going to have to submit an override for students that just don't meet the general criteria we have in our system. From the overrides, that's, ooh, I pushed the wrong button. You'll certify your file. So in a nutshell, it goes in that order. And then once your data is certified, you're done for the year. Okay. So now when it comes to reconciliation, there are lots of individual steps, and I'm going to go through those. But this is where, again, I want to plug last year's. Last year, I went into the FAD manual a little bit more. That's going to be what I call the FAD Bible, because it talks about the process from start to finish. It has a lot of information and descriptions on what everything means. So that is going to be critical if you're listening to this and you're brand new. Download the FADS manual for sure. Read it. If you have questions on it, reach out. We can always provide additional training as necessary, because we know that this is not an easy or just a straightforward process. And so that for sure is one of your biggest resources. So once you get through all the error resolution, you've been uploading your files, you finally get to a point where you're like, hey, I'm ready to reconcile. That's where we're going to focus on today, is that process. So the way that this works is on the coordinating board side, we have the numbers that you requested from us throughout the year. How many students you asked for, or you were going to pay out, and then the amount of money that we paid to you. So each one of the programs, there's different cutoffs and there's different timeframes on when we collect those numbers. So I wanted to break that down for you because that can be helpful when you're reconciling. Our grant programs. So when you log in to the grant payment portal through CB Pass, you're going to be asking for money throughout the year for a certain number of students. So on August 2nd, that was the last day to request money. So that's the snapshot in time that we used. And then if, of course, there's any adjustments to any of that, we take that into consideration. But August 2nd is the last day that schools had to submit. So that's what we're using as our kind of timeline there. The grant payments portal collects that data. That's what we use in our FADS budgets that we run your file against. Okay. As far as what I call special programs, that's educational aid exemption and bilingual education program, same cutoff, but that's through those fillable PDFs that we have online. So any of those forms that we received from y'all, we track those on a ledger and we use those totals to load into our FAD budget. So your file is run against that from those request forms. Now moving on to College Access Loan or CAL and Texas Armed Services Scholarship Program or TASSP, those are based on funds that were dispersed as of August 31st. Again, what we did is we created the student loan detail spreadsheet and uploaded that into Move It, and those are the students that you'll find that correspond with that. Now, Texas College Work Study, that's going to be your allocation dispersed. So we send it all in one lump sum. And then if you send us any money back, we took into account that refund. And that was as of August 31st as well. Now, Texas College Work Study Mentorship Program, Student Mentorship Program, those are derived from your financial report that was due on September 8th through the new online portal system. So again, similar to the grant payments, those are taken from where you're reporting that information. We take those totals, we feed them into the FAD's budgets. Lastly, GEAR. So GEAR was all of the cumulative reports as of June 30th. Most of y'all submitted monthly reports and those stopped earlier in the year. We had some schools that got additional funding or needed additional time there to pay out their funds. So all of the monthly reports were combined cumulatively and then loaded into our system. So that's the way that you'll be able to reconcile. And again, I'll be showing you that in a minute. One thing to keep in mind that has caused some confusion is that the emergency funds through GEAR, which is separate from the grant program GEAR funding, that is not reported in FADs. You don't need to send us any student totals. All of that reporting was done independently through your monthly report. We had an emergency report, and then we had our grant programs GEAR report. So just wanted to clarify in case you were wondering, where do you put those students? You do not have to report those here. That is being done separately, and there will be additional GEAR reporting from my understanding, which we will notify and make y'all aware of at a later point. But just for FAD purposes, you're only going to be reconciling your state appropriated money and then the GEAR money that was given to you to supplement the budget reduction that happened. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. Okay, so this is where our numbers at the coordinating board come from. So when you send us your file, we bounce it against these numbers, and if they don't match, then you get a reconciliation error. It says, hey, doesn't line up, okay? So let's talk about the process. How do you go about reconciliation, okay? So step one, you're going to log in to Move It, and you're going to download a series of reports. The first one is your edit summary. When you look at your edit summary, you're going to clear all your student errors. We already talked about that's in my other webcast. But once you get through all that, you're going to find the total unreconciled programs. Anything where there's a number there above 0 means that there's programs that don't align. It means that we found something that it just does not either match your student count, the amount, or both, okay? So step 2 is to download your reconciliation report. When you open this, you'll notice all the programs listed, and each one has its own line. And then if it doesn't align with our system, it'll be flagged with reconcile. It's over on the far right-hand side, okay? So this report breaks down your data, and it has the coordinating board's amounts, and then it has the institution amounts that were in your file. So this is how you go about determining where the discrepancy lies, okay? So you can see here, I'm going to toggle back to this one. On line 69, it says that there's 390 TEOG students that either received the state appropriated or the GEAR funding. But on the file that we got from the school, it says 353. But you'll notice that the amounts match. So that's good. So it's saying that the amounts we paid totally aligned, the student count didn't. Okay, that can happen for a variety of reasons. Maybe you moved money between the two populations. You know, maybe you didn't end up paying as many students as you originally reported to us. There's a whole variety of reasons, but we do need those numbers to match. So we need to do one of two things. One, if you identify that the error is within your file, then you'll go ahead and correct that and resubmit it to the coordinating board. You'll download your new report, make sure they're matched. It should clear that. It won't say reconcile. Now, if your numbers are right, you're like, hey, coordinating board, y'all's are not right, actually, sorry, there's some discrepancies here, we need to fix that. That's when we proceed to step 3. That's saying, hey, we need to update the coordinating board's number so that our file matches. and that's when you go to step 3. So step 3 is you're going to use a fillable reconciliation form that is available online. If you go to our program resources page under the FAD manual, there's a copy of this form that you'll see on the screen. It was also provided in the memo that went out that announced the opening of cycle 3. Okay. Now, most years this form's pretty similar, but every year, of course, we make small modifications. So we'll go through that in a minute. But for the most part, you fill this out and you'll be submitting that via email, and then we process it on our end. So we can't do anything, though, I'm going to say this multiple times, until if you have refunds that you have to submit along with this form, we can't do anything until we receive your money. Okay, so keep that in mind. So let's talk about grant programs first. So grant programs, when you find a discrepancy within your file from that report, how do you go about fixing that? You may need to increase, you may need to decrease. So let's talk about that. So when you first log into the grant payment portal, you'll always want to make sure that your appropriation year is set correctly. We've been in this system, I think, like 3 years now. So there is a drop down. You'll want to make sure you're on the right year. And then if you're going to be increasing your student count, you're going to go to request funds. Even though you're not requesting any money, that's where you increase your student count. You can no longer increase that amount because, like we said, as of August 2nd, you can't ask for any more money for 2021. That's over. If you're going to be decreasing your student count, you're going to go to return funds. That's also where you decrease your amount that you're going to be reporting. Okay, so let's look at the first one here, which is the request fund. So when you go onto the screen, you'll always have to look at the instructions at the bottom. This is a great guide, especially if you don't remember this presentation. It's always within the portal. It tells you the different options there. So on these instructions, it says that if you're going to simply be increasing the student count, you enter $0 as the request amount, and you enter the number in which you're increasing it by under the student count box. So again, you don't put the total there, you're only putting the amount that you're going to be increasing it by. Okay, and when you hit the submit button, it'll go through, and here's a little reminder that you only enter those numbers. Otherwise, you're going to end up skewing your numbers, and then we'll have to do a decrease and, kind of back and forth. It's like a little dance. So that's kind of the easy way to think about it, is just the difference. So let's talk about decreasing. So here at the bottom, again, we have instructions for the different scenarios, and you could have a combo here. So you might be reducing your amount, you might be doing the student count, you might be doing both. Okay, so you have different options here. So in this example, we're going to return $5,000. We're going to decrease our student count by 2. And then we're going to always add a comment there as to why we're doing those adjustments. That's for audit purposes, so we understand what the adjustment was for. Once you hit submit return here, you'll get a pop-up saying it's been processed, and then those changes will go through. Now, one of the most important things to remember is by entering your money there, the funds actually have to be received by the coordinating board. Entering them on this screen in this portal does not initiate a refund. Your business office has to do that on their end. So this is an important coordination between the offices if you have it divided, that if you submit a refund on here is to make sure that they're submitting that either through a EFT wire transfer, or if they're mailing funds, which we don't have too many of, but it does happen. That needs to happen in unison. Okay. All right, so we've talked about how to increase student count, how to decrease student count. So you've done that in the GPP system, but now we've got that form that I told you about. So here's a picture of the reconciliation report that I downloaded from Move It. So you can see the variances we talked about a minute ago, and then you've got your form here. So this has been updated this year from the previous years because we've got the distinction between the state appropriated grants and we've got the GEAR grants. Okay. So we have that breakdown, and you can see here on the report that we got those numbers from your monthly submissions and then from the GPP system. Those are totaled and tallied at the top, and that's what the totals are. So Here on the report, you're going to have to designate exactly how you paid out that money, and you'll mark the program. So in this example, it's TEOG, but you'll put your student count breakdown and whether you're increasing or decreasing. Now, granted, this could be totally accurate. Your amounts could be spot on, but what we're finding already is that there is some changes that are needed. So you'll document that here under student count. The amount on this one, again, if you change the student account, you'll probably need to adjust the amounts a little bit to correspond with the students you paid. And then you'll put an explanation in there, which a lot of times is going to be because it's related to gear. And so it was a little bit different this year than previous years. So you do have to have that explanation in there. And then once you have that done, you can submit that to us for processing. So now that we've talked about grants, and if you have questions, you can always put those in the chat, but we're going to be moving on to the next set of programs, which is CAL and TASSP. These are unique because you're going to still use the same reconciliation report. You're going to identify if there's discrepancies between the coordinating board and your file, but the difference on here is you're going to have that student loan detail report. So we pull those based on that August 31st disbursement date. We created a custom spreadsheet that has all your students in it, which we'll see in a minute, but we upload those in to move it so that you can view that and use that as a reporting tool so that you can communicate the changes that you need. So let's take a look at that. So the student loan detail spreadsheet, you can see on the screens, very small, I'm sure, but this is the instructions tab. So the instructions will tell you kind of step by step what you need to do, how you need to report it. And then at the bottom, you've got the CAL and TASSP tabs. Some schools will have both, some will have just one or the other. And then of course, if you don't participate in either, you won't need to do this step. You shouldn't have anything on your reconciliation report. When you click on the CAL and TASSP, it's going to have a listing of all the people that we show in our system based on the parameters that I described to you. Now, we know schools have different academic years, you have different loan periods, you know, but this is how we pull our data, and your file, it may not align with our parameters. So again, last year's webcast did go through exactly step by step how to fill out this spreadsheet. But the long and short of it is you have the ability to communicate through this spreadsheet to say, hey, Susie Q didn't get that money here, they got this money there. And you can add or remove things as needed so that we can update our system. So that's where this happens, is on this particular spreadsheet. Now, you still do have to fill out the reconciliation form. Again, we know that there's a lot of steps, but this is all for documentation purposes and so that we can make sure that the file is as clean as possible before it's certified. So again, like we talked about in the prior one, you mark the program name, and then you're going to fill out any adjustments to student count or amount that you did within your file, the spreadsheet that I just showed you. The nice part about this one is there's no explanation needed on this report. And that's because you're putting your explanation within the spreadsheet that you're going to upload back to the coordinating board. So you'll go and you'll download it from Move It. And then when you're done with it, you'll upload it to Move It. This form here in front of you, though, is emailed to us. So again, I know I'm going through this fast. There's lots of details, but luckily all of this is in the manual, and then you can listen to last year's and this year's as many times as you want because it's recorded. So we'll be putting this online for y'all. All right, let's move on. So this is the last piece of reconciliation that I wanted to bring up, which is when you're returning funds. Like I said, lots of details. You need 3 items. You need not only, well, if you're returning money, we need the funds. We already talked about the collaboration down in that note. You can see we need that collaboration with the business office. Just because you say you're going to return it, we have to have those on file for us to adjust your number. So definitely make sure that you do that piece of it. You do need that reconciliation form, the one that I keep talking about and showing you, and it's been altered a little bit for gear this year. That form is critical. And then the return of funds form. Went a little out of order there, but that can either be done through GPP. We've got our online forms. And then we have our Cal and TASSP online form. So there's a variety of different forms that go with the programs. Again, if you're new, you can always reach out for additional training if you're not familiar with the return of funds process. Okay. So once you've kind of gotten through reconciliation, you've gotten all the funds returned, then you're going to submit everything. And then what happens is we send you a notification that says, hey, we've updated our numbers, go ahead and resubmit your file. So that's kind of like, you know, we're going to do another round of edit checks and cross checks, and then it's going to tell us whether or not you're good to go. Now, if it goes through smoothly, you're going to get an error-free notification that says, hey, you're all done, it's ready to validate or certify. But that won't happen until we get all your money, we get all your forms, and everything's good. Now, a lot of schools have overrides. So as a reminder, overrides are actually the last piece of the puzzle here. So before you can finish, there's certain students that might fall into a very unique situation and have to be manually overridden in our system. So currently, you're going to send those override requests via email. We have a template that is in the manual. You'll go ahead and fill that out, indicate the reason for the override, and then send that through, okay? Again, if you're confused on the process, remember I had the little flow chart at the beginning. You can always circle back there. All right, so once you've gotten through that, you've submitted your file, you've gotten the errors done, you've reconciled all your money and your students, you've done your overrides. Finally, you're at the certification process. So this is, again, when you're putting your stamp of approval, you're signing the line, you're ready to go. This is going to be set in stone here. So you log into CBPass, and there's a certification one. You'll notice there's validation, which is for cycle 1 and 2. Certification is for cycle 3. Your designated person fills that in and hits submit, and then you'll get a confirmation that y'all are certified for the year. Now, I don't know if Deshay wants to type in the box, but I think last year we even allowed schools to have a week or two, or I can't remember how long it was, to just, if there were any modifications, we may or may not do that again this year. It's always best to try and make sure your data is as flawless as possible, but that's something I think we found helpful, is to make sure that schools can have a little extra time just to make sure. And I will change this slide to say certification process, by the way, because validation is a little confusing. All right, so I think we're at the end. We're moving right along. So I'm going to keep trucking along here. Hopefully you're adding your questions in the chat box if you have them. But I think you're really going to like this. We talked about it at the most recent TASSP conference, and schools were very excited about it. But we are actually doing a FADS modernization. And so before you panic, you don't need to worry. We're not changing the structure of the files right now. We're not doing anything on the data elements or the individual things that you're reporting on. But what we are doing is we're changing how you send and receive information, okay? And this is going to be happening between now and next summer. So we're going to have some test schools that are going to be working with us to implement this new process, but I wanted to just give you a little sneak peek. So current process, as you may be aware, is you upload the file and you retrieve your reports through Move It DMZ. Okay, so that's the current way. When you have overrides, I just talked about this, you have to email them to us, right? You type up your email, you have to wait and wait and wait, and then eventually you'll get a response, and then you submit your file. And then lastly, you go into CBPass and you certify or you validate and you submit that. So it's kind of a disjointed process. There's a lot of different forms and things to do. So this modernization is to streamline and upgrade so that schools can more easily navigate through the data submission process. So let's talk about the future process. So the platform we're building it on is similar to CBPass or that GPP system that you use to get your grant funds. It's going to look very much like that. The great thing about this new modernization for FADS is everything is going to be in the same location, and you'll be able to upload your file view all your reports in the same location. We're also trying to enhance it by making the file format when you download things better. So you'll have Excel now versus just PDFs. You'll have a choice on how you want to download that file. So that is definitely a change. Now, another thing is I didn't even get to show you that. So on the screen right now, you can kind of see the reports, you can download it, you can see the timestamp on it, all the necessary information. There's different filtering parameters at the top. So it's just really nice to be able to have those tools. Now, overrides will be done, same portal, you'll do them online. You'll get to save draft, you can print them, you can submit them through there and get your response. So it's going to eliminate the back and forth with emails. Lastly, your validation and certification, all of that will be done through this new portal. You'll be able to see it there. You can download old files. You can do all of that here. So again, it's one streamlined new area that FADs will be. That does not mean, this is my disclaimer, doesn't mean that FADs won't change even more, but this is the current plan for our modernization. But hopefully we'll continue to improve it. Our manual may change as things change with our state programs or even the federal program. So it's never going to be just final. It's always evolving, and that's just with anything in life. So just wanted to put that out there, that even though this is going to be different, the manual so far has not changed, and we don't plan for it to change too much in the near future, but it will eventually. All right, so who's ready for statutory requirement updates? I know that y'all are all like wondering, what does this mean? But if you got our notifications, we sent something out on September 29th to communicate about selective service. It's our favorite topic. I know y'all are all super excited about it. So selective service for many years now has been kind of the intriguing topic, like what's going on with selective service. So as you're aware, the Department of Education had released their guidance saying that they were going to be removing it in future years off of the ICER. They're not going to be doing the database batch anymore, and that schools can go ahead and start implementing that. So we have received lots of questions. What does that mean for state aid? So we did notify schools several times now, but the most recent was on September 29th, and it was just to reconfirm that the student does have to indicate if they're registered or exempt in order to receive state aid. And that's under Texas Education Code section 51.9095. Now, one thing we clarified though is that based on how the statute is written, it applies to federal funds or gifts and grants accepted by this state. So we wanted to clarify, what exactly does that mean? Federal funds or gifts and grants accepted by the state. So I'm going to break it down for y'all. So a statement is going to be required for the following. Our state appropriated funds. Those are the funds that we've always said selective service applies to. That's going to be your Texas grant, TEOG, TEG. Those are the 3 grant programs. That's going to be educational aid, college access loan, your work study programs. You've got the 2 of them there, and then you've got your TASSP program and educational aid. So those are all the programs that we pay out money that we've been appropriated by the legislature. So those you do have to have a statement on file for those students. The second bucket was federal funds. Those are those federal funds from the statute, but that get passed through the state treasury or governor's office. So the one example that we have right now is your GEAR funds. Those are from the federal government. They were paid to the state of Texas, that then funneled through the governor, that then funneled through the coordinating board onto the schools. So those are federal funds that you would need to collect a selective service statement for. Now, luckily, y'all have already been doing this, right? So they should have already met this requirement. Shouldn't be a problem. But in the event they continue to issue out GEAR and that goes away for the ICER, you would need to continue to collect a statement. The last is the institutional aid. So these are things like the programs funded by tuition set-asides. So that's going to be your TPEG program, and then your other designated tuition set-aside programs, and any exemption and waiver programs. All of these do require that the student designate if they're registered or if they're exempt. Okay. So let's talk about how does that affect y'all? So we publish a online selective service statement. We know that most students are verified through their ICER. Okay, but as we know, that's going to be going away. So one of the things that we did is when looking at the statute requires only the statement. It does not require proof. So on the statement this year for the upcoming TASSP and then our upcoming award year that starts next October, we have updated that to remove the proof element from the statement. So the institutions no longer need to collect proof of registration or exemption from students. You simply need the form that they sign and indicate their status. You also don't need to verify that it's correct or incorrect. Now, that's assuming there's no conflicting information. If the student just straight out says, I didn't do it, and then they sign that they did, obviously you have a conflict there. But if the student fills it out, you have no issues with that information, you don't need to go online or do any additional validation of that information, okay? So going forward, we put you can see a note at the bottom, you can start this now, but it's not required until 22-23, which starts next October 1st. But institutions have to determine the best method. And the reason we say best method is because school A may have a huge staff, a lot of technology, they've got a lot of resources, and you've got school B that, you know, they only have 2 people in their financial aid office and they don't have the manpower to do certain things. So it's assessing how are you going to do this for your students who receive state aid, because the ICER validation for selective service will go away eventually. We do know for the next year it'll be there, but it's going to be phased out. So you have to have a plan in place to make sure that you either build this on your portal or you do some kind of system so that you can still get that. Now we listed any of the following can be used to meet the statutory statement requirement. You can use the one I just showed you, which is available on our SFAP webpage. If you go on there on our program resources and scroll down, it should be located there. You can also still use the ICER for the time being. You're still going to have that for a while, so you can use that. Or you can go online and print it from sss.gov. Now, you may have remembered I said proof is not required, but we all know that there are students that don't respond, don't go on their portal. They're just very, kind of procrastinators. And so this is an option because this does confirm registration you can do. Now, you don't have to do this in addition to the statement. It's just in lieu of. You can kind of have your choice. Okay, so I know that may generate some questions. Feel free to ask, or you can always submit those to us if you want to do that at a later point. Okay, so that was the update we provided on selective service. We're going to move on to another update, which was also sent on the same day on September 29th. And that was to communicate that the eligibility requirement found under Texas Education Code, now I'm drawing a blank. It's okay. There's too many codes for me to reference. I'll reference them in a minute. But the code says a person is not eligible to receive a grant under the subchapter if the person's been convicted of a felony or an offense under Chapter 481. So what that means is convictions of any felony, as well as convictions of any offense under Chapter 481. So the clarification is that the phrase is not limited to controlled substance felonies. So that is a change in interpretation. It's always been like that, but we want to make sure that schools know that when students answer the question and they go online, so for state aid purposes, they do need to understand that it's any felony or it's an offense under the Chapter 481. So the programs that this relates to are only 2 programs. This is Texas Grant and TEOG. So if you don't participate in these, this does not impact you. The federal requirement is going away, but always keep in mind that was different to begin with. They were not the same requirement. So I've heard a few schools say, well, they're getting rid of ours. Can we stop, using this? And I'm like, well. The state one was always different. Okay. So We did update our sample. If you recall, in our program guidelines, we always issue a sample that schools can use or mirror. This one is not required that you use ours. It's more of just a helpful tool, but it does need to be clear that change, you need to go online or however you ask the student these questions. It needs to be very clear that that there's that delineation, that there's a felony or the offense under the 481. It's not just, crimes involving drugs. It can be anything. Okay, again, like the previous statement, there's no requirement that you're going online or doing a background check on anyone. None of that's required. It's simply collecting the statement. If you have conflicting information, then you would need to do that. But schools have total flexibility on how they collect this, the wording they use, the frequency you collect it. The coordinating board does not provide that level of detail on the eligibility requirement. Selective service is different. That one you do have to use our selective service statement. You can weave that into your portal. You can make it electronic, but it needs to have the same intent. This one has a lot more flexibility, but it does have to have that clarification so that students understand what they're marking off. Okay. So on here, same as the other one, you can go ahead and do this now. You can plan for the future, so it won't be required till 22, 23. All right. Whew, I'm talking fast today. Reminders and updates. So bilingual education report, we finally got out the door and it's ready for y'all. So this only applies to 7 schools, but the deadline was extended to November 5th because of our release date. So that's your end of year report. We send it out to those schools. You'll need to submit it. But the reason I wanted to send this out today or talk about it a little bit is the way that you upload it has changed a little bit. You'll notice on the screen, there's a new way to submit the report. We used to submit them via email, and we found that it was very difficult to confirm or track or do anything with those forms that way. So we've built this online submission, and so you'll go online and upload your report. Same way for your campus-based, your state campus-based programs, which includes your license plate insignia, student deposit scholarship, and Texas Public Education Grant. So not only are the reports due, but any refunds associated with those programs, and also those public schools that all do TPEG, each year we're required to collect a copy of your current guidelines, and those include an as of date on them. So the nice part about this is you can upload all of those items here. You'll put it in here and shoot it off to us, and then we will get back with you if there's any questions or updates. But the campus-based report, similar to the other one, it was extended. So that is now on November 19th of 2021. And if you have questions on this, you'll want to reach out. I'm going to plug another webcast, but last year I did a walkthrough of the state campus-based report. I did it line by line. I was trying to make sure that financial aid and the business offices, the ones that track those funds, understood what we're trying to collect. So if you're new to this and you need help, you can go back to last, I think it was October, I just don't remember, but it was definitely towards the end of the year. It was either October or November, and there's a step-by-step for this particular. All right, so couple new updates. This has not gone out yet, but will soon. But I wanted to use this month, since it's our last one of the year, to make sure you know that annual user access review has been postponed. We will be doing that in spring of 2022. So we just want to make sure that you don't stop submitting updates. So if you have staff that are new, moving, or have left, please continue to send those so that we can keep our systems as clean and secure as possible. But we will be shifting that a little bit. So you'll notice we're going to be publishing our institutional calendar once we send out that notice, but wanted to let you know because we've gotten some questions from the schools wondering when that will happen. So we're going to move that out a little bit. The other thing that you may wonder about is net price calculator. We've kind of done a lot of that over the past year or two because of our transition to our new platform. But we decided that for the new 2021 file that the Department of Ed releases, that's usually in the springtime in February or March. So we will be waiting to do the annual net price calculator update until then. So as soon as the Department of Education releases their template, we'll be notifying schools to then do the file process that we did this past year, but we won't be doing one this fall. I wanted to let you know about that. And then lastly, the institutional calendar. Now, the one you see on your screen, we have not published yet because we want to send out our notice first. But once we do, then the calendar will be posted online. It will have the postponement dates on there so that you know not only about the bilingual, the state campus-based, and then the user access. All of those will be listed on there. All right, I think that is it. Let's see. My favorite part, if you've been on my webcast before, I like to drill this part in, but this is how do you get in touch with us? If you're new, you may not be aware of these resources, so I'm just going to go through this quickly. But we have various phone lines that are available to borrowers and the public. That includes our borrower services line. That's for students taking out a college access loan or the Texas Armed Services Scholarship Program or any of our older programs that have been discontinued. They can call that phone number. We also have something called the Texas Financial Aid Information Center line. That's for the public. It's really, an additional resource for people looking to get into higher education. It's not really intended for current students. 9 times out of 10, if they call us, we point them right back to you. We know it can be frustrating if the coordinating board tells them one thing, which we don't have all the details of their file, so we'll send them back to you. But this is something that we want to make y'all aware of that is a resource for students and their families. Now, our phone line, which is Financial Aid Services, is a direct line to us. So we want to make sure that you have this phone number. So you can call us with access issues, eligibility issues, loan or TASSP issues. You call us, it's 844-792-2640. We're open from 8 to 5 each day. We do close for an hour from 12 to 1, but you can call us and get assistance. And if we can't do that, then we're going to have you submit an online inquiry through Contact Us. So it's an online web form. It's available on any of our websites. It's a great way if you have detailed questions or you want something in writing and you don't need an immediate answer, you can just do it online. So the way that you fill out the form, this is very important. I say this every month, so if you've heard this a million times, you're welcome. So on here, you definitely want to click on institution, make sure that you select that so we know it's coming from a school versus some other place. You'll type in your institution's name. This is one of the most critical pieces, is always mark financial aid question, even if it's a loan, even if it's something like user access. If it's related to financial aid at all, it's going to be this one. You'll include a description. Make sure you tell us why you need help or what the details are. The more the better, honestly, because we need that information to process your request or to get back with you. Lastly, if you can provide all your contact information and your direct line, that will allow us to be able to call you back and get more information if we need to do that. If you just put your main line, we may never reach you, and it kind of becomes like a little telephone game. Last thing on contacting us, we at the moment are short-staffed, and so I say give us grace as we work through your online inquiries, as we answer your phone calls. We are rebuilding our team. We've had various promotions. Everybody's getting promoted, which is fantastic. We've had some retirements. We've had people who've taken new opportunities. So again, please give us grace as we work through them, but I'm going to plug this right now that we're hiring for Program Specialist 3. We have put that out on our website and also through TASSP. If you are interested in working for the coordinating board, specifically for me, you would be on my team. we are hiring for 2 Program Specialist 3. And Program Specialist 3 do a variety of things, including training, updating resources, forms, pretty much everything I talk about every month. This is what we work on, is all of these materials and educating the schools and working with the schools to support them, to make sure that they understand our state programs. So if this sounds like an opportunity that you're interested in, or you know someone, please have them apply. We're excited to see, get some fresh eyes, fresh perspectives into the coordinating board. So just wanted to plug my job opening. It does close in a few days. So I believe it closes on Monday. So definitely take a look at it and apply soon. All right, that was it. Questions? We've got 9 minutes. I actually went faster than I thought. I thought I was going to be pushing it to the last minute. Any questions? I see some questions popping up in the chat, but I'll check in with Deshay and see, are there any that I need to answer? Usually pretty quick there. Awesome. Yeah, I never even have to do the hard part, which is the question. All right, so now that the webcast is going to wrap up, just a quick timeline. We will be getting not only the video posted on our website under the Stay Connected Webcast archive page. Usually takes us about a week, sometimes sooner, but you can check back online to see if a copy's been posted, but we'll also include a PDF version. Again, go back to prior years. We do these every month. There's so many different topics at this point. I even go back to reference my old presentations to get information. I almost always try and change something every year. So even though you may see something similar, I do, everything evolves. And so it's not always the same presentation over and over. I think that's all I have. So unless anyone has any more questions, and I don't think so, Ms. Garcia, if you want to reach out to us one-on-one, you can email Deshay and myself on the job position. We can get back with you on how that will work. I will let you know. Everyone else, I will bid y'all farewell. Have a wonderful, wonderful holiday season. We will see y'all next year. Please stay in touch, be safe, and we'll see you in 2022. Oh my goodness. Have a great one, everybody.